Hello Year 3, it's Mr. Howell. Well done for all of the work that you did yesterday with identifying the text features of our information text that we've started to look at. Today we're going to focus on two of those features, and we're going to look at headings and subheadings, and we're going to explore them in a little bit more detail and think about why they're important for our information text. Like we did yesterday, we're going to have three separate learning objectives again, which your tasks will relate to, which I'll explain at the end of the lesson. So our learning objectives are to identify headings and subheadings and to select why they are used in information text. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail than what we did yesterday. We've got to correctly match headings and subheadings to the correct information. And then lastly, we've got to generate an appropriate heading and subheading based on the content. So we'll look at some examples of some paragraphs, and if you are in that group or if you're challenging yourself today, then you will be able to generate an appropriate heading or subheading for that. I know that some of us found the work from yesterday a little bit difficult. Just remember, we are in uncharted territory with this online learning in the form that we're doing, and you're all trying your best, and we're really, really proud of you. So just keep going, and remember that success is not always a destination, but it's that journey that we're on, and we're all in it together. So well done for all of your efforts. It's really much appreciated. We're going to start this lesson then with this question. Where would we expect to see headings? And you might think that I would give you a clue in the form of a picture. However, I haven't. Unlike the picture, the headings that I'm after have got nothing to do with the sea and navigation or anything related to the picture, but instead it's related to headings in an information text, surprisingly enough. What I'd like you to do is I want you to pause the video, and whilst you recover from my hilarious joke, I would like you to think about the different places that you would expect to see headings in, and then we're going to have a look at that answer to that question in a moment. So I wonder how many different examples you came up with of answering this question. Let's have a look at a few different suggestions. Some of you might have written the position of it on the page, where you would expect to see it near the top of a page to introduce that particular section. At the start of a new section, if it's in a book, for example, you might expect to see it in the new heading or at the top of a new section of a book that's got lots of different sections in it. You might see it on a poster. It might be that you look around school or look around in your local neighbourhood. If you're out for one of your walks, you might be able to see a poster with a heading on it. It might be a newspaper. It might be the headline that we would call it in a newspaper, but it would be near the top of that page. Maybe it's at the top of a website. If you think about the amount of digital resources that are now available, it might be that it's at the very top of a website as opposed to printed on paper. But with digital technology being so common now, obviously a lot of resources and a lot of information is indeed online. Our next question is, why have a heading? Why is it important? Why would we use it? Is it useful for anything? Well, I'm going to answer that question in a moment, but I first want you to see if you can come up with some suggestions of why you think having a heading might be important. So hopefully you've had a chance to answer that question. And again, we're going to look at some suggestions. This isn't a definitive list. There might be other answers that you've come up with which are equally as correct. But some of the answers that we've got written here are that it helps the reader to know what the content is. So in an information text, for example, a book that's got lots of information in about lots of different things, it might be that helps the reader to know what that specific content is going to be about, that specific page, for example. It might allow for separate sections to be included in one larger section. So we're going to look at some examples of books that I just happen to have had lying around, and we're going to try and identify the headings and subheadings in some of those. It might allow for the reader to easily see it. Headings tend to be quite big, they tend to be bold, they tend to be quite obvious in their position on the page as well, and it makes it easy to draw a reader in and explain what that section is going to be about, what that information text is going to be about. And it makes information easy to find. If you're looking for a particular heading, or if you're looking for a particular title, the headings make it obvious because, as I say, they tend to be quite obvious in where they are. So what we're going to look at now is some examples. So we are going to play a game. It's everyone's favourite game called Find That Heading. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but just in case you're not, let me explain how this is going to work. I have found a selection of books in my house, and I have taken a picture of one page from each of those books that I've found, and I want you to see if you can find that heading. Just the heading, not the subheading. For eagle-eyed spotters amongst you, you may see that some of these have got subheadings and some of them haven't, but I want us to just concentrate on the heading to start with. So we're going to see if this works. We're going to play one page at a time. If you need to, you can pause it when I leave the screen up with the new picture, and you can have some time to try and find it. Here's the first one. Are you ready? So I'm going to leave that on the screen and give you a little bit of a chance to try and find the heading before we spot it. I'm going to give you a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have you managed to find it? Let's have a look. So hopefully you've identified that this bit here is going to be our heading for this page. A little bit of a tricky one, because you have got lots of bold writing with the different countries on there in this map, in this atlas. And this particular map that I've chosen is of Europe, and it says Europe continued, which is very exciting because the other pages also contain lots of information about Europe. However, I went with this one, and that heading tells you that that is everything that's contained within that page relates to the fact that it's on the continent of Europe. So that's the reason that that is our heading, and that all of the other information you can see is content that's related to that. So hopefully you're able to spot that. Exciting. Right, let's move on to the next one and let's see if this works. Picture number 2. And again, I'll give you some time to see if you can find the heading on here. And I'll give you a countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did you spot it? And up here, Monkey Mayhem. Hopefully you've managed to spot that that was the heading. Now again, on this one here, you've got a lot of content, you've got a lot of information, you've got a lot of pictures, and a little bit of a tricky one because it was quite hidden. Now, although it's at the top of the page and it is different, it's at the top. Actually, I wonder how many of you might have actually identified the finishing touches. Now, as you also might have spotted, it starts here. I'll see if I can circle it. This step here is step number 9, and actually at the very, very top over here, you've got step number 8, and this subtitle of the finishing touches makes the suggestion that maybe there are some pages before. So I'm going to hold my hands up. I was trying to be a bit sneaky, but the main heading is going to be Monkey Mayhem. That's the name of this project. The finishing touches would indeed actually be a subheading under this section. So well done if you were able to spot that. Let me just delete these. I feel like we need some theme music for this game, but we'll keep going in the absence of any. All right, next one. Are you ready? You're on the edge of your seat, aren't you? I can tell. Here it is. Okay, so apologies for the slightly small text, but I wanted to get the beautiful landscape in there as well. And you've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did you get it? So here, my heading is this quite small text here which says 7 worlds. Now this is a book that I was very fortunate enough to get given for Christmas, and it's got a lot of content in, a lot of information, and I chose this because it's quite a good example of having lots of headings and subheadings within that as well, but lots of headings at different points throughout the book talking about the different continents, the different animals that are there, the different wildlife, the different habitats. So there's lots of opportunity for there to be an exploration of those headings and subheadings. And although it doesn't stand out, although it's quite small, it's at the top of that section, it's printed separately, and although it's not big and bold and colourful, you can tell that that is the heading and that there are some small subheadings underneath that as well. So well done for that one. And this next one is a personal favourite of mine. This is my first words in Welsh. So let's see if you can spot the heading. You've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and 0. Now please do not ask me to try and pronounce this, but we're going to go with the Welsh and the English translation, and that is family. Please don't ask me why I have this. It was a birthday present, I believe, for my daughter. That's the kind of gift that keeps on giving. And so we've got the heading of family, and you can see there's obviously lots of words which relate to that heading of family, and we'll move on from that one. Let's have a look at our next one. If you're still playing, well done. I will give some team points out. Here's our last one, and I'll give you a little bit of time to look at this carefully. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did you spot it? I'm hoping that you were able to spot this straight away because we did this last term in science. We've got Mary Anning, who was our fossil expert, and there's lots of subheadings here that are hidden within the text, but this is our heading. Now you might not have spotted it because it's almost hidden in plain sight at the top there, and you've got the graphics with the A being a fossil as well. I'm going to hold my hands up and say it took me a little bit of time to just double check that that was the heading, so a little bit of a tricky one there to end on. Well done. Give yourself 1 team point for every correct answer that you got, and give yourself a bonus one if you didn't skip any of them. Well done. Let's have a look at what this means. Now that we've looked at headings, then we're going to look at subheadings. I want you to pause the video here, and just like you did for the headings, I want you to see if you can think about what subheadings are going to be used for, where you might see them, what they might look like, and where they are going to be used. Off you go. I wonder what you came up with then. Let's have a look at this list that I've come up with, but there are lots more possibilities and they are probably equally as correct. So let's have a look. I've put that they are headings which link to the main heading, but they give more information. They give a little bit more detail about a specific part of that. For example, if you had an information text about flowers, there's lots of different parts of flowers, so you might then have a subheading of the stem. You might then have a separate subheading about the roots, and in each of those sections will be more information about that specific part of the flower. They might be smaller, and they will still be maybe slightly different in terms of their appearance from the rest of the text, but they're going to be smaller normally than the heading. There might be more of them. With a heading, you're more likely to just have one main heading with lots of different subheadings within that. and that could be used to help the reader to find specific information. So if you were looking at information about the roots of flowers, you wouldn't want to read the information about the flower itself or the petals, but you would be interested in finding that subheading that says about the roots. So back by popular demand, I would love to say, is find that subheading. And hopefully, as you've just played the game, you know what to do. We're going to have a look at this together though, so we're going to see if you can find the subheadings within any of these texts, and indeed if there aren't subheadings within them. So let's have a look at this together first of all. And we've identified the heading of Europe already, and actually this one's a little bit of a tricky one, as I said earlier, because although you've got lots of the different countries in this part of Europe that are named, actually it's a bit difficult to know whether they are subheadings or not. For some of them, where you've got information contained within that country, so for example, for Poland, you have got some information related to Poland that is contained within that subheading of that country. So you could argue that countries could class as subheadings. It's not as obvious in terms of its presentation. However, you could have an argument for saying that they are indeed subheadings. A little bit of a trickier one, but I wanted to put that in there just because an atlas is a useful document or a useful resource that you may use in the future. If we have a look at this next one, now we've already looked at this a little bit and said about the heading being the Monkey Mayhem, and about this finishing touches being one of the subheadings. Now you could also argue that each of these different steps, these different stages, is a subheading because it's telling you what to do at that particular stage of this project. So you could say that they are classed as subheadings as well. I won't highlight all of them. You've also got this here where you've got this title called Achievements, with some what looks like goals, whether you've achieved it and what you've managed to be able to do. And that box, that subheading title, could be classed as a subheading as well. Let me see if I can clear. I'm going to have regretted making all these highlighters now, aren't I? Let me do that, and let's have a look at our next one. So here we said that the heading was going to be the 7 worlds that you can see. And did we have any subheadings? Can you spot any? Is there anything different about any of the words on the page that you can see? Well, if you can see really, really clearly, and your eyesight is much, much better than mine, you can see that we've got 2 continents here, Australasia and Africa, that are subheadings. They're very, very small, and actually they form the first word in that sentence. So they're not your normal subheadings that you would find, but they are in bold, they're in darker print, and you can see that it draws your eye to them. So they would be classed as subheadings, albeit they're not how we're going to use our subheadings when we come to do our writing. Here in our Welsh speaking book, have we got any subheadings? No, I think we can agree that there aren't any subheadings here. We've got our heading, and we've got that in 2 different languages, but I can't see any subheadings here. All of these words fit into that heading of family. So we'll move swiftly on from that one before I attempt to slaughter a language. And here, can you spot any subheadings on this one, and where are they? I'm going to leave that with you for a moment whilst I change colour of my highlighter to make it a little bit more obvious with this book. So we've already identified that Mary Anning was our heading. That's the information on this page that we're looking at. And actually, if you look really closely, down here you've got some dates. And these dates are going to be important discoveries and important events during Mary Anning's life and during her scientific endeavours. And you can see that they're very, very subtle, but I would class these as subheadings because it's then giving you information that relates to that particular date. So those subheadings, those dates, are hidden very, very well within the text, but they are subheadings. But there are certainly one subheading that is also on this page. Can you spot that? I'm sure you've probably already seen it, haven't you? This one down here where it says fossil fact. So that in itself is quite a clear subheading because it has got that text is in slightly different font. You can see that it's contained within this fossil shape on the page as well, and so it draws the reader's eye to that particular section. So well done for getting on with that task. I know we did that one together, probably because you weren't that interested in the first game, so I apologise for that. Let's have a look at the differences then between our headings and our subheadings. I know you enjoyed the game really. So what we're looking at now is the differences between the two. We're looking at what headings are, what subheadings are, and how they're different. And the best way to see that is to have a look at them written down next to each other. So with headings, we have got that there's usually one. There's usually only one. And it's usually at the top of a page. And it's used to grab the reader's attention. It's used to shout out to the reader to read about that particular topic and find out a little bit more about that information. And it tells the reader a clue as to what's contained within that page in that particular section. And it might not be able to contain everything, but it sums up really nicely around what is included within that particular topic. Whereas the subheadings, as we've already said, it's more likely that there's going to be more of them. It's going to help the reader to find a specific bit of information that they're after if they want to find a specific section or a particular aspect of that information that they're looking for. And it can be used for us as writers as well as readers to help group and record our ideas together. So later on in the week, when we start thinking about planning our ancient Egyptian text, we're going to start thinking about how to group and record our ideas together, and we can use those subheadings to help us to make that really, really clear as to what we're writing about as well. So it makes that writing process a little bit easier. So those two side by side, you can see some of the headings and some of the subheadings differences, as well as some of the similarities that we've looked at already throughout the lesson. So I know you will be as disappointed as I am that this lesson is shortly going to be ending, but I need to explain your tasks first. And your tasks will relate to the learning objectives that we covered at the start of the lesson. So if you need to go back to the beginning and you want to play the game again, that's absolutely fine. Or if you want to just look at your learning objectives, then please do so. For the first task, everyone's going to do this. And that task is going to look something similar to this. And you're going to have to identify the heading and the subheading within this particular text. And then once you've done that, you then need to use these statements to help you select whether it's talking about a heading or a subheading. And all you're going to do is you're just going to tick one of those boxes, or both if you think it is both. So you're just going to go through and you're going to tick them, or you can write yes or something into that square, into that grid if you need to. For the next task, which is going to be the green group and the purple group and the red group if you want to challenge yourself, your next task is going to be to match these headings and subheadings to the right section of this text. So you're going to have to read the text carefully and look at where you think those headings and subheadings go. Now, I'm not going to tell you in this lesson what is a heading and what is a subheading. I want you to see if you can work it out. They do fit. You can move them around, or if you need to, you can write them in the order in which they appear as well. So that's going to be your second task. And then the last task for today's lesson is going to be to write your own heading and subheadings. So here you've got 3 different boxes, and you need to see if you can write an appropriate heading or subheading that goes with the information that is underneath it. So your subheadings for here, let's use this one as an example. This subheading will need to relate to this information here, because that is the information that it is, the title of it is the subheading of that information in the box. So you need to come up with an appropriate subheading for that. If you have any problems with the task, if you're not quite sure, or you're having difficulties, please do your best to do it on Teams if you can. If you can't, then please do it on paper. Take pictures, upload them to Teams, or send them in into our email address as well, and we'll send it back to you with some comments as well. So just in case you haven't got the email address, you can email either myself or Miss Wilkinson on the email address year3@ssjs.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching, and again, thank you very much to all of your grown-ups that are helping you to be able to access these videos and for you to complete your work as well. We are really proud of you. We said it at the start of the video, I will say it again. You need to be proud of yourselves as well. You're all doing fantastically well. I'm really impressed with the work that I'm seeing, and you're all doing brilliantly. So well done, and we look forward to seeing you soon.